Welcome back, everybody. Kind of a part two of episode two.
Yeah.
Continuation of the Maroon Bison presents the Southern Comfort Podcast.
Yes.
I'm your host, Richard McDaniel.
And I am co-host Kevin Harris.
And want to thank you guys for joining us. Again, we'd like for you to spread the word if you are in the political space, even if you're not in the political space and you want to learn about our analysis of politics from a Southern point of view, a Southerner's point of view, from a black male's point of view. When we are two vets who were in the game, still in the game pretty much, combined for 40 years of stories, analysis, encounters, experience. And we just want to bring it to you from a different perspective, right? So you see a lot of people on TV and put out podcasts now, but I doubt any of them have sort of the background that we have and things that we've experienced. So we hope to bring you special guests, fellow colleagues of ours. We are live from Wakanda, a.k.a. Atlanta. And Kev, on the last episode, we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about...
We were talking about, I think kind of pretty much like the first time we worked together was on the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016.
Yep.
And some of those experiences, what that felt like, particularly after the loss. And then... and just also just some of our own sort of personal observations with her, because she ended up being a part of both of our rises in politics.
Right.
So,
and from the last episode, we kind of cut it off, but I think we want to kind of jump back in, right?
Yeah.
And pick up after the loss. There was this rise rise of resistance, right?
Yeah.
You had women's marches. You had. Kind of Black Lives Matter becoming more prevalent.
Yeah,
right? Like,
all this funding that went into like the ACLU, particularly around stuff when Trump tried to do the Muslim ban. I mean, just unprecedented mobilizations around the country.
And so when we talk about what we had seen coming across the country and, thinking that there was going to be a rise of new leadership, do you feel like that was the case?
I think yes, right? I think that there was some new leadership that did come out of that loss, right? You did see more women running for office.
Yeah.
I think you saw more minority folks, feeling more comfortable about running, feeling that it was more of a necessity, where I think they maybe would have put it off another cycle or something had the election gone a different way. But I do think though there is a question around whether or not that what happened, whether or not it was long lasting.
Right.
Here we are again with another Trump presidency, and I think you can they had a march this time too, when like that one in 16. So
there was a march?
There was a march this time, from the same folks. So, so there's some argument around whether or not it was lasting enough, but there was a rise in leadership, and there was in you and I, our collaboration on campaigns picked up significantly after that Clinton campaign, and we were a part of a lot of those sort of big inflection points, right? So yeah, absolutely.
And I tell people, good things always come out of a situation for President Trump, right?
Yeah.
If it weren't for President Trump, and I tell people this, I thank him, because I would have probably never met my wife. Had he not become president, he wouldn't have pulled Jeff Sessions to be his AG.
Yeah.
Jeff Sessions steps down from his Senate seat in Alabama, and which opened up a field for an open seat for people to run for that seat. And because of the work that I did on Mayor Randall Whitfin's campaign, and kind of providing some infrastructure for that campaign, it helped me gain a better knowledge of Alabama politics. But also, I met some amazing organizers,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went on to go ahead and do a rally with Doug Jones
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
President Biden on
Mm-hmm.
October 3rd, the day Randall got elected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where I met my wife.
Wow.
Right, and then from there, I go and become basically deputy campaign manager
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for Doug Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I ran the political shop as well as the organizer
Mm-hmm.
shop,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is history,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I called you up. It's like, bring your ass back home.
Yes. Yes. Always.
And you came and you saw the operation that we were running.
Yep. Yep.
You know.
Yep. And knew, that was one of those moments, right? Particularly in rural Alabama, in the Black Belt, where
Right.
you really have to have some high turnout to be able to win a statewide race in
Right.
Alabama. You saw folks energized and mobilized, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that of the last election.
Yeah.
And you saw once again the South often passed over, often looked over, but again that was a lesson in how to turn out and mobilize African American voters and how to keep them engaged.
Right.
And so you saw it there, and you saw it in Doug's victory and what he was able to go on and do in the Senate. Unfortunately, it didn't last as long as we wanted to, and so it's interesting. His is an interesting case, right, where we saw definitely there was a rise in leadership, but again, that's just this question of how much of it was lasting, right? He only got to do 2 years, but got a tremendous amount done in those 2 years. The best senator we've ever had in my lifetime in Alabama, for sure, and that includes the present situations that we have. But it also kind of, again, is one of those examples that leads to, so where do we go now? Because a lot of what happened after Trump won that first time, a lot of it, you could argue, isn't still here. A lot of those pieces are still not here for this second time. And so, I don't know what that means.
Well, I think one of the things that we provided for Alabama was some real infrastructure.
Yeah. Yep.
And process on how to do things, right? And we had to set it up quickly. We only had really 8 weeks.
Yeah.
To set up a campaign to go.
Yeah.
And this was a special election in December.
Yes.
During a time where, Crimson Tide.
Yes.
Are trying to get into the national championship.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's just one of those. You don't mess with football in Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether you are, Auburn or Alabama.
Yep.
You just don't mess with it.
You don't do it. It's an institution, and and on top of that, you're trying to elect a guy who prosecuted the Klan. Prosecuted the Klan.
And that was one of the many reasons, that I would go into when we go into these back roads.
Yeah.
I would say you gotta, we were putting on these fish fries. And
yeah.
People don't notice that the fish fries were golden.
Yeah.
Right? They were beautiful pieces of community involvement that brought black and white
together
in a room together.
Yeah.
To hear this man talk about
how
I'm a white guy in the South who stood up to 4 Klansmen.
Yeah.
Because they bombed the black church.
Burned the black church. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You can't make this up.
Yeah.
Right?
And that guy became a United States Senator. And I don't know that Doug would have run the same way, or would have had to fire to run the same way had the election gone a different way.
Right.
So you had all these people like him that did feel compelled to serve.
Right.
And personally, that's where I was. Like, after I kind of got over, not sort of got over, but processed sort of feeling, like I had failed in some way when Hillary lost. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get back to work.
So we got the victory of Doug Jones on our belt.
Yeah.
We're riding high. And I think I'm getting ready to I'm doing some local races in Georgia.
Yeah.
You call me and say, hey, can we send Ebenezer? Do we think Ebenezer can do Maryland? At the time you were doing Ben Jealous' race.
Ben Jealous'
Ebenezer is one of my mentees.
Yep.
Who follows me everywhere, and he didn't want to go, and you said, "Why don't you come up here?" And I was like, "Oh no." He's like, "Nah, man, come on."
Yes. Yeah.
So I did. I said, "Let's do it."
Yeah.
I came up to help Ben Jealous.
Yeah.
Run for governor.
Yeah. And for y'all that don't know, Ben Jealous was the former national president of the NAACP. He was the youngest president of the national NAACP they had ever had, and he launched a campaign, a long shot bid for Maryland governor.
Yeah.
And he again was another one of those, had been thinking about running for office for a long time, but kind of got a little bit more urgency about it once he saw that Trump was in office. And he, we didn't win that campaign, but there were some historic things that we did do, right? Like Ben became the first African American to ever get 1 million votes for governor. No African American had ever done that at that time. Ben's campaign also...
Well, not just African American, no Democrat candidate, right?
Martin O'Malley had.
Okay.
Yeah, but no African American had ever gotten 1 million votes for governor at that time. A lot of the things that we ran on, policies, particularly around criminal justice reform, a lot of those things ended up getting enacted in the legislature. But those were all things taken directly from our platform as governor that we put together on that campaign. And it helped to lay the groundwork for the governor that Maryland has today, Wes Moore, who is a black man. And Ben, he's still active right now. He leads the Sierra Club, which is a national environmental organization. So his leadership did continue out of that, but in terms of running for office, it was Trump.
Now this was 2018, and so if you guys remember during that time, it wasn't just Ben who was running to be the first African American governor of a state, Maryland. We had Stacey Abrams in Georgia.
Yep.
We also had Andrew Gillum in Florida.
We did.
At the same time, I think I was not only doing Ben's race, but I also was helping out a good friend, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
Yeah.
For her bid to unseat an incumbent in the primary.
She's another one.
In Boston, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then at the same time, I was doing Mike Espy's U.S. Senate race.
Yeah.
In Mississippi.
Yep.
Which was a special race because, and again, another race where we got the margin to accumulated 48% of the vote.
Yep.
Something that had never been done in Alabama.
Yep. Yep.
Had raised the turnout to some of the highest it ever been, but also provided that state with real infrastructure.
Yes.
When you think about southern states outside of North Carolina, Georgia, and I would say
Virginia.
Yeah. And Florida.
Florida used to, yeah. Yeah.
They've seen real campaigns, real infrastructure.
Yep.
Right. But they don't get the funding and resources that they should have. I do credit Stacey Abrams for putting another spotlight on Georgia. She kind of took sort of the groundwork infrastructure that was laid during Obama's reelect, Michelle Nunn's bid for U.S. Senate in Georgia. And she built on those foundations. I probably say that, I think I'll consider myself kind of the grandfather of those foundations. And she helped take it to new heights. And I think we closed and sealed the deal with the elections of Raphael Warnock, Senator John Ossoff,
that happened during that
President Biden, right?
Yep.
And so again, we talk about infrastructure.
Yep.
And we talk about the need for black voices to be at the table.
Yep.
To help get that going.
Yep.
How do you think we're going to move forward now that we're sort of in this numbness of 2025 And there are elections coming up.
Yeah, I think first, before we talk a little bit about the future, one of the things I want to pick on that you said that I thought was so insightful was in all of those examples, and we're all there. Like everything that Rich just mentioned, we were either working on those campaigns together or separately at the same time. And so Ayanna's leadership is still very much there and still going. But what you see in all of these examples, though, is that all of these inflection points were very much being driven, again, by the South, which a lot of times is just overlooked for leadership. In Mississippi, there were lessons, though. Like, it's a tough state to win statewide. Mike Espy, a historic figure already in his own right, even without that Senate race. But the way the voters were mobilized and turned out, right, there's lessons there. Same with Doug Jones. Same with what happened in Georgia with Raphael Warnock. And then you see Warnock win the race, and that changes the whole tenor of the Senate, and that becomes a pillar of some of the resistance to Trump. And then even in the South with Andrew Gillum, right, he electrified a state in the South that really the infrastructure had atrophied. And to me, what he also did in that race was he showed again the importance of running authentically, right? And the coalition that he built, right, is something that we're still trying to figure out how to do now in the wake of this last election. But that leadership, again, came from the South, and it came from African Americans. Yep. And Andrew Gillum said, I'll never forget, Ron DeSantis wasted no time. Any chance that he could point out to people that Andrew Gillum was black, he did it to try to scare them. And you remember in that debate when Andrew Gillum said, some along the lines of my opponent goes out of his way to remind everybody that I'm black. And he said, well, I am black. I've always been black. And as far as I know, I'll be black until the day I die. So now that we've gotten that out the way, let me answer your question, right? He said that in a debate. And the thinking at the time, and probably now as well, would be you would never tell a candidate to do that, right? But that man came the closest we've ever come in our lifetimes, especially since the time we've been doing professional politics, to winning a governor's race in Florida. And he did it, authentically. Yeah. He did it speaking clearly and directly. And again, where did that leadership come from? It came from the South, and it came from African Americans, right? So,
if you had to go back, what would we have? What do you think we could have done different for Ben? What do you think could have been done different for Andrew?
I don't think that there's necessarily anything that we could have done differently in those cases. I think it was just timing, right? A lot of times with these campaigns, these politics, and these elections, it's about timing, right? Barack Obama becoming president has as much to do with the timing of his run than it does anything else. You could argue in some ways Hillary Clinton not becoming president has more to do with the timing of when she ran than anything else. I've always thought that 2004 was her year, that she should have challenged George Bush, and I think she could have beat him. But so I think with those folks, it was just a question of timing, and I think the takeaways, when you go back and you look at it, you were again starting to see fractures and fissures that came to a full head in 2024. Right? In Maryland, we lost that race because there was an erosion of support amongst our black base around economic concerns. So you had African Americans in that state who voted for a white Republican governor over the former head of the NAACP. Why? Economics. Yeah. They were worried about their taxes being raised, right? You saw that even with Andrews, and then also really in Stacey's race, there is a reluctance that we have seen out in the data where it is a challenge to get black men to line up in support of a black woman. And so we saw that come to a head with Kamala, but you kind of saw it first with Stacey.
Yeah, particularly when it boiled down to economics.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, they say there's a saying that Georgia is the best place to do business.
Yep.
And they just didn't see that,
in those candidacies.
In those candidacies.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And even when you look at Vice President Harris, right?
Yep.
It boiled down to that paycheck.
Yep. She struggled on that front, and I helped do a lot of the messaging for Future Forward, which was the main PAC that was supporting her campaign, and that was one of the things that we grappled with, which was how do we deliver a compelling enough economic message, and yeah, it was something that we struggled to do, and you could argue that we were too late in that sense, because those concerns have been there for the bulk of the Biden presidency, and you could argue that by that point, it really didn't matter what we said to people; they were just kind of done.
So now, I'm going to touch on it. And you don't have to dig deep.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like Biden, or let's say Biden advisors, were at fault because they waited too late to pull the trigger on him not running?
I think that we now, looking back now, having the benefit of hindsight, that yeah, like what should have happened was after, what would have put us in the best position to win was after the midterms, for him to say I'm not running, and to have allowed the party to be able to do a full primary.
Yeah.
Kamala for sure would have participated in that primary. I think she would have won it, but she would have been a better candidate having done that, as opposed to being thrown out there with 3 months to go. And what one last thing I will say on that too is that one of the key differences between Obama and Kamala, we got 2 years to run for president with Barack Obama. Right. 2 years of the country seeing him being tested and everything else. We didn't get that with Kamala. Kamala got 90 days.
Well, but she also had 3 years as vice president.
Correct. Which had it happened like the way like I just said, where like right after those midterms, she had 3 years of vice presidents, but she was still under the thumb of the president and not able to fully operate, because that's not what the job is, right?
Right.
Because it was assumed that he's running again. Those dynamics change in terms of her visibility, in terms of her having her own campaign, her being out there on her own, being able to express her ideas. All of that changes the second he just says, I'm not running.
Yeah.
Just like it did for the 3 months that she did get.
So let me. You say you think she would have made it out of primary?
I think so.
I mean, how many people do you think would have been a crowded primary?
I don't think so. I think it would have looked like 16 when Hillary ran. You had like a Bernie type. You had a random like Martin O'Malley and a couple of other folks who had no chance.
You don't see a Newsom, Governor Newsom?
He wouldn't have.
You don't see a Pritzker?
He wouldn't have. Not had this happened.
Any other senators? Klobuchar?
I don't think they would have. I think you would have been looking at kind of like the fringes, and I don't mean that ideologically, but like I'm blanking on his name. Old buddy that ran against Biden this time, Dean, Congressman. What was his name? Exactly, I don't remember. You would have had some candidacies like that I think would have been thrown out there at her, but nothing serious.
So, I think your position is interesting because you were still in the fight, right? So for other reasons, I sat on the sideline. I would have conversations with people here and there. Some on the team, some were consultants. They were asking me, how I felt, what I thought, and I definitely expressed the need for places like Georgia. Yeah. To have more attention. I think it got out that they definitely need to treat Georgia like they treated any other battleground state.
Correct.
Go to places other than just Atlanta.
Correct.
They ran more of a surrogate program doing that. But, you know, just looking back, I think because of those 3 months that she had to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
it built up hope in a certain group
Mm-hmm.
that right now, if we were to try to engage them,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't be as receptive, and that's black women.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, you know, once again, the parties are going to have to do a tremendous job this next cycle on how they talk to black women, because they are fragile.
Yeah.
I think women as a whole are fragile right now.
Yep. Yep.
Right, and because they don't know what to expect with this new administration. And the first 2 weeks, this man has shown his ass. I mean, you know, he's issuing executive orders. You can obviously tell that immigration is something that they about to spend a bulk of the country money on.
But and what's crazy is that what I don't think what should get lost on anybody is they only have a problem with the black and brown immigrants. They don't have no problem with the other immigrants, just the black and brown ones.
Yeah, yeah.
He's married to an immigrant.
I mean,
But him, no problem. It's so when we say that, you know, we have to be very clear about what we're dealing with. When you look at the dismantling of DEI and everything, just make it plain. Like, he's going after the black and brown immigrants. Let's be very clear about which ones he's going after.
Just read a report that he, and this is probably no news to anybody right now, he has stripped the training video of the Tuskegee Airmen from being shown during Air Force training. Right? And so you look at history.
It's just history.
You know, they had the lowest loss rate a record of any battalion. Right?
They're heroes.
They're heroes.
They're heroes.
As well as the black women who helped shuttle the planes to get them there, right?
That's right.
They're heroes. And now you're trying to wipe away history that saves lives.
Right.
Not just black lives, but white lives.
Yeah, the country.
The country.
Advance our national security.
Matter.
Yeah, well, exactly. But advance our national security and enriched our legacy and global leadership as a country.
Right.
And trying to dismantle and erase that, it's just blatantly just obvious what it is. And I think it leaves us at a place now where I think the faith and the confidence in our institutions amongst black people, especially black men, I would imagine it's at an all-time low.
So when you say those institutions, what do you mean?
I mean our government, our court systems, our nonprofit systems, our, you know what I mean, just democracy.
Yeah.
The idea of what America is, I think, what America professes to be. I think the confidence in that is very low now, and people don't see those institutions as viable vehicles to bring about change in their lives.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's literally protections that have been built into the system that have to be guarded against, that are being eroded away. And if you don't show up at the table, they're just going to keep taking them away. And so where does that leave us?
Right.
And it can't just be, y'all got to register to vote.
Well, I think we're in a stage of this apathy where, you know, the time to have that feeling is not now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And why isn't there a resistance like it was before?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, what are we in this? We are. Well, so one, we talked about this with some friends of ours.
Mm-hmm.
There's a branding problem.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The Democrats have a branding problem. The Republicans have a branding problem right now.
Yeah, they. I don't think their brand is that great either, but they're just better at getting more people to vote for them than we do. And because we should be clear, the winner of every election, numerically, are the people who are registered and don't bother to vote for either party. That's the largest group.
That's the largest group.
So our brand is way more in the toilet than the Republican brand is, but their brand ain't like off the charts either.
So I definitely think we are in a redefining era of the Democratic Party, right? We talked about it on the last episode where we had to redefine what the middle class really looks like.
Yep.
You know, we have to redefine how you engage black men.
Yep.
We have to redefine or rebuild or redevelop trust with black women.
Yep. And invest in the South.
Invest in the South. And so when you look and when you think, where does that leave us, right? Like, in terms of leadership, going into this midterm, people always say Virginia is a catalyst for what the midterm is going to look like.
Yeah.
And it always flips, you know, Democrat, Republican.
Yeah.
And if the tea leaves tell the same, we're supposed to get a Democratic governor. I'm not quite sure that Virginia is setting the tone anymore, right? So, you know, with governor races coming up in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, they aren't doing theirs, are they?
They just had theirs. Yeah.
And Kentucky just had theirs.
Yep.
Maryland, Florida. Do you ever think we'll regain power in Florida? Or are we, 10 years away?
I think we can reclaim some power in Florida. Keep in mind, like, the same time Gillum lost, what we were also working on in Florida was a referendum to raise the minimum wage, and a referendum to man, I'm blanking on it. It was to raise the minimum wage, and then there was one other one that I'm forgetting right now. But the point is that at the same time DeSantis got elected, the same electorate also voted to increase the minimum wage in Florida. Florida is one of the most unaffordable states right now in the country for working class people. I am now a resident of Florida. My mortgage has increased by $2,000 a month because of insurance cost. There's an insurance crisis in Florida that is raising cost on working families, and so the playbook is there, but we need infrastructure, we need message, and we need people to step into the void and run for these offices the same way they did after Trump won the first time.
Well, there's hopes. I definitely I'm coming off the sideline to kind of get back in the game in a different way. Like to once again, I think about my wife and the way she felt, and when she saw that Kamala wasn't winning, and the work that she poured in, and I don't like seeing that, right? Like,
me either.
Nobody makes my wife cry.
No man likes to feel like or have a sense of not being able to protect his wife.
Yeah.
And I felt the exact same things and didn't know what to say to my wife or how to talk to my wife about it after the election, because you have not just this clearly way more qualified and capable black woman who should have been the president, right? Yeah. And how do I tell my wife that it's not about gender, it's not about race? No, it absolutely was. Like, by any objective measure, he's unqualified. He's a convicted where and what a way to just kind of spit in the face of black women particularly, and what they have done in this country. There is, so, yeah.
Well, it's definitely going to be some pushback. I think everybody really right now Unlike before, where it was a resistance, it was marches, it was, I think people are retooling and going back to the drawing board to see
Yeah.
what can be done differently. I myself, I think we kind of need to redo or recreate a new crop of political operatives,
Mm-hmm.
right, who actually know how to create, develop, and run a campaign,
Mm-hmm.
not just someone who, saw someone else do it and think they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that takes time, right? And we have time on our side right now, but we don't have time on our side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Conversations I've been having, there are people arming up, getting ready to jump in the fight to run for higher office or elected office. And he cautioned, if you can't raise the money,
Mm-hmm.
don't do it. There's a state rep from Georgia, Calvin Smyre, long-standing state rep.
Mm-hmm.
He's really great with the Obamas, close friends with the Clintons.
Mm-hmm.
He would say, it takes coal to run a train. It takes gold to run a campaign.
That's true.
And you gonna need money, 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 money.
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you are about your business. It shows that you can corral people and have them give high dollar and low dollar to your campaign.
Yeah.
It shows that you should be considered a threat on the scene.
Yeah.
But after you raise the money, you have to put in the correct infrastructure and build out a good team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you and I have always stressed, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Hiring the right people to do the work.
Yep. And investing early.
Investing early, yeah.
Investing early, and we in 2020, I think we had a little bit of a breakthrough in the South, right? With Biden's victory in Georgia, but I don't think that commitment was necessarily maintained moving forward. Georgia, it's just very clear that the thinking of the campaign in 2020 and in 2024 was going to be those Midwestern states, and Georgia's like a nice to have if we kind of get to it. Because remember, I told you in 2020 we were like the only battleground state. Our budget, all the other folks knew their budgets and they had it. Our budget, we're finding out week to week what we're gonna get because you're not seriously committed here. They only want to invest enough in Georgia to make Republicans spin here, not enough to win the state, and that's gonna have to be something that changes.
So one of the things I remember, Tim Kaine came here, and I drove him around. He flew under the radar, and he asked me what did I want to see different or done different. And I think we have to get the DNC out of D.C. I think
so too.
They need to create regional pods. DNC South, DNC Midwest, DNC West Coast, Northern Pacific, and actually get back to some real grassroots, grass tops, organizing development and make those states feel like you're really invested in.
Yes, and think about the talent, the untapped talent that you would get, and what a boost to the infrastructure it would be if we adopted that. But that's not what I hear anybody talking about, and I think it's a real, there is a real concern that I have that we'll just kind of gloss over, and we'll kind of, I don't think the party fully appreciates the fact that these things are not anomalies to Donald Trump.
Right.
That these are problems that are going to stay with us after Donald Trump has left the scene, because as we've discussed throughout our conversations here, some of those fissures started to show before Donald Trump was even on the scene.
Exactly. Well, this, again, one of the reasons why we do this podcast to talk about it, walk things through. This is our own discussion. Things that we've shared over the years through phone conversations. And we're putting it on wax, so to speak. This is a unfiltered look in sort of cultural commentary and strategic insight of battlefield stories from Kevin and myself. We always close out with the Mamba Mentality. Somebody that embodies what Kobe Bryant stood for. He is someone that Kevin and I think the world of when he was on the court.
That's
He
right.
was relentless, showed passion, obsession, resiliency, and he was fearless. Those are the 5 pillars of the Mamba mentality. So who would you like to give your Mamba Mentality Award to?
My Mamba Mentality Award this time, I give it to Kamala Harris, because she was thrown into a very difficult situation where she had to carry a lot, and I think for her not winning that election is not because she personally did not perform flawlessly as Mamba would, right? She rose to the occasion. She rose to the level. She hit all the marks that she needed to, but they were just headwinds beyond her control that contributed to her not winning that election. But in terms of that being ready, give me the ball, right? Biden dropped out of that race. It was somebody had to take the shot and run that race. She wanted the ball. She got the ball. She ran with it. Just like the game's on the line, Mamba would have wanted the ball.
What do you see for her future? Is she going to try another run? Is she going to try to run for governor?
I hope that she stays active and involved. I think she will. I personally would like to see her become the governor of California. And I think that if she were to do that, that there would be space to look at a presidential run down the line.
She's definitely young enough.
Yeah, she's definitely young enough. And so I hope she runs for governor of California. And you know, what a legacy, right? First black senator from California, first black attorney general from California. She'd be the first
woman, female president, vice president.
First woman and female and black vice president, and then she'd be the first black woman to be a governor of a state.
Black and Asian. My Mamba Mentality Award is going to go to the Tuskegee Airmen, and also the women who helped usher in the female World War II pilots. Right, they definitely showed everything that you embody in the Mamba Mentality.
Yeah,
right?
Without a doubt.
They utmost professionalism, efficiency, getting the job done, saving lives, ensuring that, you know, the war was won. And we credit that to them. And now that is being stripped away from them. And it does nothing but weaken future cadets who are coming through the Air Force, because they would not learn about what it means to be, to have that Mamba mentality.
Yeah, and that commitment to the craft.
The commitment to the craft.
The commitment to the craft. Right.
So my award to them, I give them a salute. Again, I am Richard McDaniel.
I'm Kevin Harris.
And this is the Maroon Bison Presents the Southern Comfort Podcast. Thank you all. See you next time.
Peace.